Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to take a journey, but not to some faraway place. We're going somewhere way more complex, and honestly, way more fascinating. Inside ourselves. We're going to dive into a path for understanding who we are at our core, drawing from some really deep spiritual and philosophical ideas.
So, it really all kicks off with this one huge question. What actually defines us? What makes us human? Is it just our bodies, the things we achieve, or is there something else, something deeper going on?
You know, a lot of modern thought, especially in psychology, tends to start with what we can see and touch the brain, our bodies, how we behave. The whole idea is if you can measure it, you can understand it. But does that really tell the whole story?
Well, the perspective we're going to look at today says not quite. It suggests there's this incredible inner world that kind of animates everything else. And it lays out a specific path for exploring it, a journey that takes us from simply knowing something to truly seeing it, and finally, to becoming it.
Okay, so let's dig into that first piece, this question of being. It really comes down to two totally different starting points for how we see ourselves. Do we start with matter, or do we start with the soul?
So check this out. On one hand, you've got the matter first view, which is pretty common today. It basically says the soul, consciousness, all that stuff, it's a product of the brain. But the soul first view, which is central to so many spiritual traditions, flips that completely on its head. It says, no, the soul is the source. It's the primary thing that gives life and meaning to our physical bodies.
So if you take that soul-first approach, understanding ourselves isn't about scanning a brain. It's about looking at these incredibly powerful, invisible forces that shape our lives. You know, that sudden feeling of love, that flash of anger, the sheer force of your own will to do something. These aren't just seen as chemical reactions. They're seen as the soul making itself known. And this quote just nails it, right? If you only focus on the physical stuff, you're only getting half the picture. The real journey, the real adventure of self-discovery starts when you decide to turn your gaze inward.
So if that's the starting point, putting the soul at the center, the very next step gets super practical. It's all about building an inner compass. It's about creating a foundation of balance and justice, not out in the world, but right inside of you. To get our bearings, we kind of have to bring together two different ways of seeing the world. Western thought has really prized knowledge that comes from out there, from our senses. Eastern traditions, on the other hand, have often emphasized the awareness that comes from looking inward. Real wisdom, this path suggests, is about finding the harmony between both. So how do we actually do that? How do we build that inner balance? Well, the journey begins with establishing justice inside ourselves. And we're not talking about courtrooms here. We're talking about mastering our three core inner powers: our intellect, our desires, and our anger. The goal is to get all three working together in harmony.
And here's the kicker. The idea is that a just and peaceful society out there is just a reflection of people who have first found that justice and peace inside themselves. It all starts within.
All right, so once you've laid that foundation of inner justice, the path forward isn't just one big leap. It's more like a climb, moving up through three totally different levels of understanding, or what this tradition calls certainty.
These are the three major thresholds you cross. Now, these are concepts from classical, Islamic, and Sufi thought, and they lay out a path that starts in your head, moves to your heart, and finally becomes your reality. Let's break them down.
The first stage is all about your intellect. It's logical, it's rational, your mind sees the evidence, and it just knows something is true. Think of it like this. You see a plume of smoke on the horizon. You don't see the flames, but you know with certainty there's a fire. But the second stage, this is a huge leap. You move from your mind to your heart. You're not just figuring it out anymore, you're witnessing it. You've walked closer to that smoke, and now you can actually see the fire. It's not just an idea anymore. It's a direct, intuitive experience. And then there's the final stage, which is total immersion. This is where the line between you and the truth just disappears. You're not just looking at the fire from a distance anymore. You've stepped right into it. You feel its heat on your skin. The truth isn't something you're observing. It's a reality you are living from the inside out. And this is just the perfect analogy for it. Imagine there's a well. One person can know there's water because they saw it on a map. Another can actually see the water by looking down into the well. But the third person, the one who has actually drunk the water, well, they have a completely different level of certainty, don't they? Now, moving through these stages of certainty means you have to deal with the biggest character in this whole story, your own self. Or, in Arabic, the nafs. And the key here is that it's not an enemy you have to kill, but this powerful, raw energy that needs to be understood and, well, refined. And this self goes through its own evolution. It starts out as the commanding self, just driven by impulse and wanting what it wants right now. But then, as our conscience kicks in, it becomes the self-reproaching self. We start questioning ourselves. With work, it can become the inspired self, where doing good just feels right. And finally, hopefully, the tranquil self, where that inner civil war is over and your self becomes a peaceful partner. I absolutely love this metaphor. The point isn't to put out the fire of the self. No way. It's to learn how to channel that energy. An uncontrolled fire is destructive, right? But a disciplined flame that gives you light, it gives you warmth, and it shows you the way forward. So, what fuels this entire transformation? It all comes down to one thing: sincerity. It's this art of letting go of the need for an audience, of freeing yourself from what other people think. It's about building that inner space where the only thing that matters is your intention, because no one else is watching. Okay, so after all this deep inner work, navigating the stages of certainty, transforming the self, where does this path actually lead? We finally arrive at the destination, a state of profound inner peace. And that destination is contentment. But this isn't about just being passive or giving up. It's an active, conscious state of harmony. That constant inner fight just quiets down. Your self stops being this problem you have to solve, and instead becomes this balanced, peaceful force that's with you on the journey. This final line really captures that feeling of arrival so beautifully. When your heart finds that place of contentment, all those heavy burdens you were carrying just fall away. And when your soul is in alignment, it feels like you can't get lost. And so, we're left with this question to really think about. We live in a world that is obsessed with external success, but this whole journey suggests something radically different, that maybe, just maybe, the most important battles we ever fight and the truest victories we ever win happen in that quiet, invisible arena inside our own hearts.